Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hidden Faces of Poverty, a community education webinar presented as part of our What Poverty Looks Like campaign with Legal Aid Society of Middle Tennessee and the Cumberlands. This conversation will shine a light on one of the most misunderstood challenges facing hardworking families today, the benefits cliff. My name is Tina Sanders, and I serve as the Development Manager with Legal Aid Society. I'll be your host in today's conversation, and I'm joined by three incredible guests who see this issue close up every day, and I would love for them to take a moment to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'll go first. My name is Kimberly Russell, and I'm the director of an initiative called Beyond the Cliff with Martha O'Brien Center in East Nashville, Tennessee.
I'm Allison Jones. I'm the Health Benefits and Education Practice Group Lead Attorney in the Nashville office at Legal Aid of Middle Tennessee.
My name is Emma Scholl, and I'm also a staff attorney in the Health Benefits and Education Unit in the Nashville office of Legal Aid Society. And our office covers both Davidson and Williamson counties.
Great. Thank you all for those introductions and for the heart that you bring to this work each and every day. So let's dive in. Right now, we're seeing how many families rely on programs like SNAP just to get by. With the government shutdown, many are suddenly unsure when or if they'll receive the next food benefits. For families living on the edge, that can bring an uncertainty, and it can really be terrifying. While this situation we're currently seeing is temporary, it mirrors what working families experience every day, which is the benefits cliff. So, Timberly, I would love to start with you. Can you help us understand what the benefit cliff is in plain language and how it shows up for families you work with?
Sure, absolutely can. What the benefits cliff is, it is a working family experience. I want to make that clear for the public, is that the benefits cliff is happening to those families who are supplementing their income with safety net, which is public benefits combinations such as SNAP, housing subsidies, childcare subsidies, and Medicaid while working. So it's not happening to everyone who receives public benefits. It is only happening to those who are working, because that experience is when that person that is working in that household, or people, because it could be a two-parent household, increase their income to better their lives and better take care of their family, or start reaching for their American dream, which is often rooted in financial stability. They experience an immediate disincentive experience where the increase in income causes them to lose eligibility or access to certain public benefits. Sometimes that's one benefit, sometimes that's one or two or three or four, depending on how many they have in their combination of safety net. And when that happens, what they're left with in the income that they're earning with the increase is just not enough to meet their basic needs. So now they're far worse off as far as financial hardship is concerned than they were prior to the income increase, which then often sometimes causes them to revert back. And revert back means they just choose not to work at all so that they can maintain their safety net, or they end up turning down whatever the thing was that would cause them to increase their income, whether that's a promotion, an increase in hours, or simply an annual raise. And so then they say, I will decline that annual raise, promotion, or work the additional hours because I know that it's going to impact the thing that I find the most secure, which is their safety net benefits, which is, like we said before, food security, housing security, childcare security, because in order to work, they have to have childcare, but then also the ability to maintain themselves as healthy individuals to work for their employer.
Wow, thank you for that great explanation. Allison, I would love to bring you in here as well, because we see that this is happening within existing policies, so it's not necessarily illegal, but that doesn't mean that it isn't a real struggle for our families. So from a legal perspective, how does this phenomenon impact our clients?
Sure. Well, there are a lot of different ways that it manifests in different programs. And I'll talk just briefly about what it might look like for somebody receiving Social Security disability. Emma's got some examples of how this shows up in our clients who receive food stamp SNAP benefits. Social Security disability is, as you may know, a benefit program for people who have worked and have paid in through their FICA taxes to the Social Security Trust Fund. And when they become medically disabled, they're entitled to draw down those funds to continue to support their lives during that period of disability. One of the challenges is there are work limits, earned income limits for people who are drawing disability. And without getting into kind of the really weedy timelines and rules around all of this, what it boils down to is for somebody who's receiving disability benefits, really of any amount, if they're able to work some, and it often isn't even full-time work. If they're able to work some to supplement their disability income, if they earn over $1,620 per month, they are not eligible for disability in that month. And if they work over that amount a certain number of years after they've been drawing disability, their disability stops forever. So they could earn $1,621 in 1 month, and then their disability ends and they have to start the reapplication process, which can take, at the very least, many months, could take a couple of years to be medically reapproved for disability. So that's a real challenge. There are people who are struggling with physical and mental impairments that prevent them from working full time and providing all of the needed financial support for themselves and their families. But they have to be extremely careful about how much they work on top of that. It really is a disincentive for people with disabilities to support themselves through earned income. And Emma can talk about how that looks for SNAP families. And some of these are the same families. They may be receiving SSDI and SNAP and other benefits that have these very strict income limits.
Thanks, Allison. So I wanted to talk about how the benefits cliff can occur for families receiving food stamps. So with food stamps, there is a gross income limit. So that means that if your income, your earned income exceeds that gross income limit, you can be terminated from the food stamp program. And so what this means for our families is that if they are working, they need to be very, very careful to not work above a certain limit. And if they do work above that limit, then their food stamps can be terminated and it can take them a while to get back on the food stamp program. And so an example that I wanted to share today is an example of a household of 3. So this is a single mother with 2 children. So if this family did not have any income whatsoever, they would be entitled to $785 in food stamp benefits per month. So that is the maximum SNAP allotment that is given to a household size of 3 under our food stamp program. So they would get $785. Now they can work. And so let's say that this family, the mother, is earning $2,000 per month. At that rate, she would get $634 in food stamp benefits. And let's say she's working a little bit more. So she's making $2,500 in earned income each month. She would get $454 in food stamp benefits per month. So you can see how the more she works, the more her SNAP decreases. But $454 is still, a very sizable, can be a life-changing amount for her to feed her 2 children. However, the gross income limit for a household of 3 is $2,888. So let's say she works a little bit more. Now she's making $2,800 per month in earned income, and she will get $346 in food stamp benefits. So not nearly as much as that $785 if she wasn't working, but still if she's making $2,800 per month plus $346 in food stamp benefits, that's about $3,146 in combined income from her earned income and her food stamp benefits. But let's say she works just $100 more per month in earned income. She's making $2,900 per month. At that point, she is over the gross income limit for a food stamp program. And once she reports that income, she will be terminated from the food stamp program, and she will no longer be eligible for any food stamps. And so at that point, her household just has $2,900 in earned income per month, and she's not receiving any food stamp benefits. So in total, when we look at those two figures, if she was making $2,800 per month, she's getting $346 in food stamp benefits. That's a total monthly income of $3,146. But if she makes just $100 more, she's kicked off the food stamp program, and that is a negative net amount of $246. So you can see, if you were that single mother and you're weighing your options, and if you're offered a raise or you're offered, a couple more hours per week, and you do make $100 more per month, your family is actually in a worse off position to accept those additional hours because you'll be terminated from the food stamp program.
Wow. Thank you all for those thoughtful responses. From what I'm hearing, this hidden phase of poverty is definitely not about laziness or dependence, but simply put, the system that was designed to help them move forward and become more self-sufficient. In reality, it sometimes leaves those families feeling stuck between survival and progress. And thank you, Emma, for that illustration, because it really does help us see what this looks like for families in particular. And Timberly, I know you work with the Martha O'Brien Center, and you all work closely with families who are trying to move forward towards economic independence. How have you seen the fear or reality of losing these benefits affect their motivation or mental health, or even their ability to plan for the future?
We haven't deemed ourselves as therapists or psychologists, so that we won't say that we know for certain exactly how it's impacting them mentally and even or physically for ourselves. What we will share is we work directly with them because Martha O'Brien has a pilot called Our Chance that is specifically meant to address the benefits cliff for many families in Middle Tennessee. But at the Martha O'Brien Center, when those doors open as we have people coming in and out, you have no choice but to have engagement with them in which they are genuinely expressing what they're experiencing. And what we found, which I think I've gotten a few quotes from some of our participants, but we are showing them as anonymous. We don't name them. But one of the statements that we use across the board whenever we're talking about this to express how it feels is they have been told the moment that they accumulated whatever combination of benefits they have, they've been told that you should get employment. And when you get that employment, you should try to excel in that employment and turn it into a career, which means, yes, you have a job. It's maybe entry level, but you should think about going to school or upskilling yourself in some way with technical training or a certificate program. And a participant will do that because opportunities and resources have been presented for them to pursue bettering themselves education-wise. Once that education is obtained, then they go and they get better jobs. But the moment that they get the better job, which comes with more money, they're immediately pushed back. So they feel like the way the set of systems that have been put in place to provide the safety net and to give them a push when they needed it to start accessing their American dream has caused them to never be able to get out of that perpetuated cycle. So if I do what I'm supposed to do and I get the job and the education, I'm then somewhat punished for excelling or progressing because now I have to deal with the fact that what gave me security, what made me be motivated was the assurance that my family would be taken care of financially. There would be food on the table, we would be housed safely, and we would be able to see a physician when we needed to, sick or for preventative care. And now those things are being taken away because I've done the very thing that I was told to do. So if we want to speak to the psychological or mental health impact, it sounds like it's a bit disparaging, because then they feel like they are the isolated population that does not have access to what they identify as the American dream, which is being able to take family vacations, being able to save, or have even an emergency fund, or have savings in the bank, or own a vehicle, if you will, because those things often with specific public benefits account for their income. So it then impacts their eligibility to even hold on to things, or to lay a foundation to save and to build as they go forth in their careers or their pursuit to education. So it does come across as if it is completely disincentivized to do better and to earn more money, to take better care of your family, but also be tax-paying citizens. It feels like that is not what you're supposed to do. When it should be celebratory, it is often met with despair or fear of losing the thing that they were taking into account when they were making those decisions.
Wow, thank you, Timberly. That is so powerful. It really shows just how heavy this can be for people who are trying their best to move forward and make a better life for themselves. I do have one follow-up question for you, and it's about the ripple effect. When families fall off of this benefits cliff, what does that mean for landlords or schools or even employers?
I like that you called it the ripple effect. I haven't used that phrase, so I'm going to steal that in the future, just so you know. Don't send me a bill for it. The ripple effect of the benefits cliff, which is why I didn't share before, my immediate responsibility with Beyond the Cliff initiative is employer engagement. My job is to educate and train employers on the benefits cliff experience, how it shows up in their workforce, and things that they can do in the immediate time to start to address it, to improve their retention and turnover, while the other part of Beyond the Cliff works on federal policy change, which the two attorneys in the conversation know that that takes time on state or federal level overnight thing. So in those conversations, my view of the ripple effect, if you will, been kind of isolated to the employer, and we use that information to educate them. But for the person that's experiencing it, it causes a wave and ripple effect. There is a person who's increased their income, who then loses their SNAP benefit, since that's been like the main benefit we've talked about today. They lose that SNAP benefit. Now they have to pull from the funds that they have remaining and choose what the thing is to take care of at that time. Let's say they get paid twice a month. Well, if I get paid twice a month, then if I have a good relationship with my landlord, then I can go and say, hey, let me give you a portion out of this check and maybe a portion out of the next one. But by all means, don't give me a late fee and don't evict me. The reality is landlords also have to maintain their revenue and their income to take care of their families. So it causes them to have to make decisions that may not bode well for the person that their tenant, the person that's experiencing the benefits cliff, because they have to make decisions that are beneficial to their business, their revenue, and their ability to pay themselves and have income to take care of their families. The other portion of that with the SNAP benefit, we have people who come to food banks or food pantries. Martha O'Brien has one. The influx of people that will come when they've lost SNAP, which is our current environment right now, aside from the benefits cliff, that will influx that space. That space will have the resources to take care of the people they were already having coming through, and maybe a little bit more. So now they have a responsibility to increase whatever their donations, whatever their means to get the food pantry filled to meet the needs of the person that experiences the benefits cliff by losing SNAP. Losing housing subsidies will impact landlords, but it'll also impact employers, because a person that cannot secure food and housing, of all things, including childcare, will immediately think, I can't go to work today. And then today turns into a couple of days. And then a couple of days turns into a couple of weeks, because at some point, a person who is losing their benefits realizes that it may be more beneficial to not work at all than it is to lose my public benefits. It impacts all of the vendors in the mix in a negative way, but also I feel like sometimes, and this is just my opinion, in a moral way, because most people who are providing support to those benefits also want to help society and their community by being a vendor that says, I will accept a certificate from the state government for this person that wants to live here. I will accept a child care certificate, and I will be okay as an employer if my employee has to have something supplementing their income, because I may not be able to pay them enough to not have benefits, but I can give them a little bit to increase. So then it makes an employer feel like I shouldn't have done the raise or the extra hours or the promotion. The landlord will say, well, my hands are tied, I can't do more, you have to leave or I have to evict you. And then as far as childcare and the food security is concerned, they're just inundated with more responsibility than what they had before, because now there's an influx of need because the SNAP benefit is not there, and there's an influx of needing childcare that receives a certificate, which impacts their ability to have revenue to pay their workers. It just continues and it becomes a perpetuated cycle that does not seem to have an end until in a perfect world, they all come to the same table and have this conversation that we all can see from outside looking in together and find a solution that we can implement in the immediate time. I may have gone a little bit further than what you asked for, but I hope that that does answer your question, but also give some insight to what we possibly can do if we can convince those entities to have those internal conversations.
Wow. Yes. No, you did perfect with answering those questions. It's powerful to see what one policy threshold can change the trajectory for a whole household and in turn an entire neighborhood. So this question is open to the floor. How can we, as community members, employers, and neighbors, respond with empathy when we are seeing someone struggling with these challenges?
I think in starting to answer that question, I'd like to respond to the picture that Timberly laid out so perfectly. Just this the idea of a cycle and a lot of moving parts, and from the enrollee, from the program participant's perspective, how challenging it is to really plan. I think, some of our conversation has been around, well, somebody might decline or somebody might stop working a certain number of hours, and that might happen in some cases. And in a lot of cases, the individual won't be aware of the ramifications of their increased work activity until it starts to be evaluated by the various agencies that they're interfacing with. So what would that look like? We have to remember that for Medicaid, for temporary assistance for needy families, Families First here in Tennessee, for SNAP, for Social Security, all of these programs have different income limits, income offsets, and resource limits. And I should add into the mix housing assistance, since that's something that Timberly mentioned. It's not an area I work in, but it's similarly situated. And what I've seen with my clients over and over again is somebody has an increase in income from one source. So they report that to their Section 8 case manager, who increases their rent assistance. Well, they've also reported it to the Department of Human Services, which administers the SNAP program, and they've reduced their SNAP benefits for that increased income. But now they have increased rent costs. So they have to go back to the Department of Human Services to say, well, now I'm paying more in rent. Well, that might increase their SNAP a little bit, but they have to report that back to Section 8 too. Well, now I'm getting more in SNAP. So now the rent goes up a little bit more. And in the meantime, if they're on SNAP or on Social Security, that household may have a $3,000 or $2,000 resource limit. Can't have more than $2,000 in the bank if you're on SSI disability. So how do you save to put down last month's rent and security deposit for a new apartment to move your family into a safer situation? And I think what I'm trying to get at here, if there's a central organizing thought to all of this kind of bureaucratic chaos, is it's very difficult for individuals, even for professionals like me and Emma who work in this space, and for Timberly every day, to know what the consequences are going to be for every change in income for every individual. For those individuals, for those lay persons, they're not going to know until they get the termination notice, until they get the benefit reduction notice. And by that point, they can't really retroactively adjust their work activity to account for that. They're just having to react over and over again to these changing benefit circumstances. It's very difficult for them to plan. It's almost impossible for them to meaningfully save. And so in that sense, the system as it's currently set up does not allow low-income working people to move forward in a straightforward way.
That's a great point, Allison. And I also wanted to say that the income limits for these programs are based on their gross income. It's not their take-home pay. So that's another common issue that we see with a lot of our clients is, when we explain to them, well, the gross income limit for your household of 3 under the food stamp program is $2,888 per month, and your income is over that, then they, come back and say, well, I don't make that much. Like after taxes, I'm only getting, whatever it may be. And we have to explain that you're not being, this decision was not based on the amount that was deposited into your bank account from your employer. It's based on that gross income limit that came, your salary with before taxes are removed.
Thank you. Is there anything else excuse me. I have to edit that part out. 1 second. Sorry about that. Is there anything else, any other reflections you all would like to share with our community about what you have seen in this space or what you want them to know?
I'd like to offer, because I had planned in my mind that I was going to say it at every turn, and it just didn't come to the front. But I'd like to offer that the preconceived notions about people who receive public benefits in general, whether they're working or not, whether they're receiving Social Security benefits or not, just someone receiving a form of assistance that is identified by the entire society or the majority of society as a handout or something that is unearned, or something that is being pulled from the taxes that they pay as working or contributing members of the community, is that sometimes it's undeserved or it's unnecessary, and the person should be more of a good steward of that by working harder or working more. And I just hope that the benefits cliff picture that we've painted in this conversation and many conversations to come paints the picture that it is not happening because someone is not making the best effort or they're not motivated to do better for themselves. It's actually a response to that very motivation. Even with those who receive Social Security benefits, SSI, they have worked and they have earned to have that ability to access those resources because they've done something prior to that earned it, and now they're receiving the residuals of that investment. But with working families who maybe be single parents or have small children or have a large number of children, it isn't because they are not making efforts or that they're lazy or that they are afraid or immune to working. It is because the cycle of accepting benefits is not a one-stop shop. It's not a one spot that you can go and get the thing that you needed in that moment. And then also say, by the way, I also need this thing. So I needed SNAP. I went and got that. I'm okay. Well, now I want to work and now I need childcare. And in order to get that childcare, I need to prove that me and my children live somewhere. So now I need to show that I have how. There are so many different things that you are required to provide to secure the public benefit in the first place. And there are so many different paths There is not a one path that you go, or one set of eligibility requirements that you meet, or one set of pieces of information that you provide. You have to do that at every juncture to receive those public benefits. So the thing today has been a single parent with 2 children. Let's stick with that. That single parent with 2 children has to go and accumulate those public benefits to take care of that small family. She or he has done that. They are also working. Managing that alone is a feat in its own. Like, it takes a lot of mental acrobatics. I'm going to get the word out today in order to manage that, to maintain those benefits, aside from something called the benefits cliff coming into play. Just to maintain them from one reevaluation or recertification to the other takes work. You can't work too much. And you also can't work too little for some public benefits. So it's a very jigsaw puzzle experience. And it takes a lot of mental strength. It takes a lot of physical capacity to do that, while also doing the things that we would normally do if there are any moms at the table, which is just manage a household, make sure our children are behaving, they're taught basic morals, they're fed, they go to school on time. Like, there are so many things that go into that. And to have it to be smacked on top of it, a cherry that is sour, called the benefits cliff, because you've done too well at managing everything, and now you've also increased your ability to continue to manage it financially, and you're told, no, now we have to take something away. And so I just wanted to offer that this experience alone, before the benefits cliff even comes, takes some kind of gut and gall to do it, and do it well. So they're working, even if you don't think that they're working hard or enough, they are working just at their front door to get over the threshold into the rest of their community and the world by just managing all of those things on the back end. And the benefits cliff comes along and just makes that even much of a disparaging or hard experience, in which it shouldn't. There should be a space in which they're able to decline off of those benefits and safety nets, if that is the reality, because that's not the reality for everyone. But for those that it is, they should be able to decline off of those and still feel secure as they progress. And that was my soapbox moment.
I think that's a really powerful point. That, and just to piggyback on that, I think what I like to keep in mind and remind folks that we're talking to about these issues is the majority of Americans have been on some form of public assistance over the course of their lifetime. I think the longitudinal studies of Americans show somewhere between 50 and 70% of people rely on a public benefit at some point in their lives. So we're not just talking about other people in our community when we talk about how these programs are structured and the effects that they have and how effective they are. We're talking about ourselves. The other thing, particularly with the current conversation around SNAP, is that it's important that folks know that most people on SNAP are children and disabled folks, and that adults on SNAP, the majority of them work. The majority of adults on SNAP are working. And those are the folks who are in the situations that we've described today. Working, trying to maintain what they need to do at work, having maybe a second job in the form of maintaining these income supports and health supports, nutrition supports for themselves and their children, by dealing with the paperwork and responding to changes in benefits as their income changes. But those are important facts to recognize when we understand who's impacted by these social programs.
Yes, as Allison said, about 35 to 40% of SNAP recipients are children, and children can't work. So when people are saying, when SNAP is being terminated, well, I guess they'll have to get back to work. These are mostly children who are getting food stamp benefits. And, I think we can all agree that children should not go hungry, and they deserve to eat. They, have no control over the families that they were born into. And, another phenomenon that we see is a lot of we have a lot of grandparents that are raising children. And, that's another group of people that, if you have someone who's elderly and now they're raising a 2-year-old, that is a lot to handle on top of, any work requirement or, just kind of juggling all of the issues that can arise when you're raising a grandchild.
I'd like to ask a question to Allison and Emma. We have accessed the DHS manual for SNAP whenever HR1 came to find out what the variations in the work requirements were going to be. I know they've been shared in like an overview way, but we wanted to like go in so that we're equipped, specifically me when I'm talking to employers about the impact of the benefits cliff. And we just noticed that it's not up to date as of yet. That manual is still out of date, which would say that maybe there's just a delay or there's some things that are being worked out on the DHS side specific to the SNAP work requirements. And so are you guys a part of those conversations to get that updated, to get it fixed so that it is accessible to those that need to understand it better? Or have you been given the update, but just not in the manual?
So I think there's some layers of responses to that.
All right.
But just for folks who may not be familiar with the kind of underpinnings of the question, the HR1, the federal legislation that was enacted on July 4th, 2025, included significant changes to what is a work requirement / time limit for SNAP benefits. And the most significant changes that it made were to the age range of folks who are subject to a work requirement and time limit of SNAP benefits, and a change in households with children who are exempt from those work requirements and time limits. So prior to July 4th, there was this work requirement for folks between ages 18 and 54. Now that goes up from 18 through 64. So there are people in their early 60s who now have to either show that they are working 20 hours a week or that they're exempt from that requirement. And if they don't either satisfy the work requirement or meet an exemption, then they're limited to 3 months of SNAP benefits in a 3-year period. Also, prior to the change, any SNAP household with a minor child in it, and that was any child under 18, was not subject to these time limits. Now, if the oldest child is under age 14, is over age 14, so folks who don't have a child age 13 or younger in the household, they're also subject to these time limits. So with respect to how Tennessee DHS is rolling out these changes, the state agencies, I can't speak specifically internally to DHS's process, Tennessee DHS's process, but at a nationwide level, the federal government, through the U.S. Department of Agriculture, which administers the SNAP program, only released guidance to the states on how to implement these statutory changes in early September. And that guidance doesn't address some circumstances particularly clearly. So they got this guidance from the federal government early in September. Tennessee DHS made an announcement based on that guidance, that folks needed to show an exemption by October 31st of this year. And then in the meantime, there's been a government shutdown effective October 1st. So there has been some more limited guidance issued during the shutdown, but I think often what happens is there's kind of like a back and forth between states and the federal agency that oversees the benefits. They'll have FAQ sessions where they can ask, what do we do for this particular person situated in this way? And that isn't available at the present time, I believe, because of the shutdown. So I would imagine that at the state level, they'll be updating the policy manual once they have a fuller set of instructions from the federal agency. But we have clients who are affected by these changes in the meantime. Like, the changes are going forward, right? So, we're trying to secure exemptions for people who are eligible for them. And it's a very fluid process. And so we'll have to sort of take each case as it comes and figure out what's going on, particularly for folks in that 60 to 64 age range. I think there's a lot of questions still about how these rules apply to them because there are conflicts in the law for that age group.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And that's a great segue. For those that are listening, Allison or Emma, what roles do legal aid play in helping people stabilize when they've fallen off this cliff? And what kind of legal support makes the biggest difference for them?
So at Legal Aid, Allison and I are 2 of 3 attorneys in the Nashville office that handle food stamp matters, but we have attorneys in each of our 8 offices that cover 48 counties across Middle Tennessee that handle food stamp cases. So if someone is terminated from the food stamp program, they can call our office and we can look at the facts of their case and calculate whether the termination was wrongful. And then from there, we have kind of a wide range of legal paths we can take. So for some of the applicants, they simply just need kind of a legal advice letter so we can explain to them this is the gross income limit and this is why your benefits were terminated. But if in the future your monthly income falls below this amount, then you may be eligible for this program again and you can reapply. In other cases where we do think that the termination was wrongful or maybe the calculation was incorrect, then those are the kind of cases that we can take for representation. So we do represent food stamp applicants and food stamp enrollees in either wrongful application terminations or people that were on the food stamp program and have been terminated. So we kind of do a wide range of legal remedies based on the specific facts of a person's case.
And we can, part of what we do is, and Emma touched on this, but a comprehensive screening of what supports are available. If you do lose one, are you eligible for something else that could help sustain through that period of transition? There are also, I think, as part of this benefits cliff discussion, it's worth mentioning that there are a couple of programs that do provide some transitional benefits for people whose work income increases and makes them ineligible for the regular, income limits of the program. There is a transitional Medicaid program for parents on TennCare whose income moves them out of eligibility for TennCare in the parent or caretaker relative category. They may be able to get transitional Medicaid for up to a year if they meet certain eligibility requirements. And we can, screen folks who may be losing their TennCare in that category to see if they should have been enrolled in transitional Medicaid. Also, the TANF Families First program offers transitional SNAP benefits for participating parents whose income moves them out of eligibility for TANF cash assistance. There's also transitional childcare available, childcare assistance available for families on TANF who are no longer eligible for the cash benefit of the program. So those, I think, are kind of a narrow set of benefits that a lot of people aren't going to be able to access, but they are available, and that might be something of a model to the extent that policymakers would be looking at how can other programs still assist people, kind of walk alongside people as they increase their work activity, increase their work income, but still try to maintain and move forward in their lives and their financial stability.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was definitely a great point that you made about those transitional benefits. So this was such an informative and meaningful conversation. I want to thank each of you for taking the time, sharing your insight, your experience, and your heart that you bring to this work every day. So I would love for our listeners to have the opportunity to give you a virtual round of applause. And again, thank you so much for your time and taking time out of your busy schedules to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the invite and having a space where we could share this information with a broader, larger audience.
Absolutely. Hopefully this won't be the last.